Welcome to Happy Talks with Dr. Alice and Donovan. Dr. Alice Fong is a holistic naturopathic doctor and founder of Amor de Soi Wellness. And Donovan Jensen is a software engineer and founder of HowToHappy.com. Together, they're out to cause more happiness in the world.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Happy Talks. My name is Dr. Alice, and this is my awesome co-host, Donovan. And today we are talking about mastering your emotions with John James Santangelo, who is an NLP trainer, successful author, and NLP results coach. Welcome, John. Thanks for joining us today.
Woo-hoo! Love it. Thanks, guys.
Yes, awesome. So why don't we start by you telling us a little about yourself and your journey and what NLP is?
Okay, that's two questions. And yeah, I'll start with the first one.
Okay.
I think my journey is probably like everyone else's that comes to self-development. We're looking to better ourselves or eliminate negative emotions or beliefs that we have and try to move our life forward, right? I mean, we're always, hopefully that's what we were doing. And I was no different. Probably getting out of high school, started in with the whole drinking and drugs thing for a couple of years and realized, okay, this is not working to change my state. And so after going to school for a couple of years, I realized that's not going to work for me. I didn't like school. And so I started my own business, started doing well with that, went back to school after 10 years, started learning about NLP and hypnosis and psychology and got my certifications in all three of them. Last year, I just finished my PhD in clinical hypnosis and behavioral psychology. That's kind of the road I went to, really about helping others, because I think once we learn this, we kind of want to share it with other people. It's kind of like having a secret, but not being able to tell anyone. And so, as some of the listeners know, Tony Robbins was taught by the same instructors I learned from, Dr. Richard Bandler and John Grinder. Robert Dilts up in Sacramento, Tim Halblum up in San Francisco. And I figured, wow, this is great technology. Why aren't we teaching this to the masses? I thought, especially the kids in school, where we really, really learn about ourselves and personality. By the time I think it's like 8 or 10 years old, 85% of our personality is ingrained into who we are. By the time we're 18, almost 100% of who we are. Very few people change after that. So I decided I'm going to start my own company, another company, Los Angeles NLP training company. So I have people fly in from all over the world and train with me and get certified for 12 days here in Los Angeles. And it's absolutely probably the best gift in the world, being passionate about something that you love to do and being able to give back to other people. And so NLP really is, as we were talking about before, breaking it down into simple components is NLP is the owner's manual of the brain. Really, that's all it is. Imagine if you could go into your computer and change programs at will, if you knew how to do that. We need updating our programs. Some programs need to be deleted. Well, it's no different than our little hard drives. Our parents, our primary caretakers download all this software onto our head by the time we're 8 or 10 years old. And basically those become our beliefs and our standards or our rules when we grow up in life. And it's not till we get about 30 or 40 years old, we realize, damn, those programs aren't working any longer. So we go on a quest, either to learn how to change them or reprogram themselves. And so NLP really is about, the N stands for neuro, the mind-body connection. L is for linguistics, the language that we use when we talk to ourselves and how we communicate with other people. And the P is for programming, the programs, strategies, or the habits that we run that do our daily life. And so really it's about changing those negative programs of the past so that we can move forward to get to the future.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there.
I know, and that's the short version.
Yeah. I think the place that I want to start, and we try to be practical where we can with this show. So I think where I would like to start is let's run through an example and see where we end up, right? So let's say I come to you and I say, you know what, John, I've got some problems with money. Let's say money. Yeah. I never think I'm going to have enough. I can't seem to figure out any of it, whatever else. What are sort of the next steps if we're going through the NLP model, or like, what are we looking at here to start unpacking some of that?
Great question. And I'm sure all your podcasters and your listeners before have come to the same conclusion. the biggest challenge that we face, and I'm sure you guys have read a lot of books like me and listened to hundreds of hours of audio programs and attended countless webinars, seminars. The biggest problem that we have is really understanding where we want to go. There's only two things in life that predicate success. One of them is the direction, right? And we say this in NLP, clarity is power. And number two is learning to get out of your own way. That's really everything that we do in life. When we chunk down every, I guess, experience or event that we've created in our past, it only has come down to those two elements. We're moving forward because that's what the brain does. The brain moves you forward. It progresses every single second of your day. So whatever you put up on the screen of your mind, it'll go to work on. The unfortunate thing is we've never learned how to be happy. We've never learned how to create money. We've never learned to develop the skills to get what we want. So the first thing, to answer your question, the first thing I ask my clients or my students if I'm doing a class is, pretend I'm your travel agent. What's the first question I'm going to ask you?
Where are you trying to go?
Where do you want to go? Because without that, it doesn't matter what tools we have, because as like Tony Robbins says, it doesn't matter how hard you're moving east if your direction is north.
True.
Right? So we take, at least when I'm coaching, if I'm spending an hour or two with somebody, I'll spend an hour or two just defining what direction they want to move into. Because that's number one. Because at that point, then the unconscious mind, which runs 90% of who we are, 90%. It beats your heart, it circulates your blood, it digests your food. You're sitting there in the chair right now and you're thinking these thoughts. Is that a conscious capability? No, that's your unconscious mind working. But the unfortunate thing is the unconscious mind takes everything literally and personally. And so what you plug into your mind and your screen every single moment of your day, because we have 50,000 thoughts a day, 50,000. Guess what? 98% of them are the same as yesterday. So we keep reproducing the same day over and over again, year after year, decade after decade, until you can step into that 2%. So the next question then is, what's holding you back? Where are we going? What's holding you back? And that's the biggest question, Donovan, you're probably going to ask is, really, when people come to any self-development program, they're trying to change anything, is they only focus on what's holding them back. They only focus on the negative aspect of their life. And you can't get forward. It's like one of my coaches used to say, you can't get to the future when your past is present. I love that. It's like, in fact, I was just telling my wife this. It's like driving a car looking through the rear view mirror. It doesn't work, right? You need to know where you're going and be looking out the front windshield, but also recognizing the past and how it can help you move forward. And so really, when I sit down with somebody, whether it be an NLP's coaching session or I'm doing it in class, those are the first two things. Where are you going? What's holding you back? And then we start unpacking it like an onion. Every emotion is a different layer in that journey. And every emotion has what we call a positive intention behind it. Because as Dr. Phil says, you wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't working for you, even if it's a negative emotion. So we start unpacking that emotion and figure out what at the core, what it is that you're doing. Is that a simple explanation or is that a little too long too? It's hard to tell.
No, it makes sense. It's helpful. Even if it's long, it's still clear and simple and straightforward, right? And sometimes you have to use enough words to say the thing. So no, I'm totally following, totally on board.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I kind of imagined like when you were talking about, oh yeah, you could just download a new program into your brain. I was like, I just went right to the Matrix, and I was like,
and
that
literally,
sounds awesome,
right? And that's I mean, I don't have literally 120 hours to go through what really NLP is about, because that's how long the class is, and all these techniques and the attitudes, because some of them are literally these techniques that you were saying we can download this stuff are days long. Literally days long, how it takes, because the mind is so complicated, right? It's unpacking all the stuff that we have and then replacing it with something else. The challenge is we come in with so much baggage that In fact, there's a great, I don't know if you know who Barbara DeAngelis is. She's a relationship expert, and she's amazing. If any of your listeners want to really understand about relationships and how to find the one you love, she does a lot of stage, seminar stuff like this. She walks out on stage. Donovan, you're going to love this. She walks out on stage, and she's coming from the wings, and she's got this big giant rope that she's holding onto, and she's pulling something. You can't see it until she gets about halfway on stage. And then as soon as you see it, it's this big cart, and it's full of luggage. And she's just pulling this thing. She goes, first thing she says, "This is all of you. You come to every relationship with all this luggage." Mm. Oh, it's a beautiful metaphor. But that's kind of what we do in life. We're bringing all this baggage into everything we do. Making money, right? You come in with your past, your negative beliefs. What did your parents teach you about money? I mean, there's so many negative beliefs. Money doesn't grow on trees. Money is the root of all evil, right? Money doesn't work for, people like me. Same thing holds true with beliefs about relationships and beliefs about health and fitness. So we have to unpack all that garbage first before we can move forward.
Yeah, I love it because I think, having the specific examples helps,
Absolutely.
Anchor it for people.
There you go. It's a good word.
When you start unpacking these layers, the process, even though the details might be mixed around a little bit, the process sounds like it's roughly the same or, similar, right? It's a lot of figuring out, okay, where are these beliefs rooted? Where do they come from?
Right.
How useful are they? What can I replace them with? Et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
I would be curious. So let's say that we've started doing some work and we've gotten to, okay, I found out what this belief is or whatever. I have found, as you were mentioning, having a target helps a lot, but talking to people, a lot of times they really struggle with that piece of, like you were saying, they get stuck with,
right.
Well, I don't like this thing that's happening right now. And I'd be curious where you take those next steps to get people from there to the place where they actually have a target, because I've seen so many times where people are, like you said, just so stuck on that. I don't like this, but they can't formulate what they actually want.
Oh, that is, you just hit it on the head. That's exactly what it is. I mean, in fact, I was writing some notes before we got on the air here about happiness, right? Because we have to define what that is first. Like most people, it's one of the things Tony Robbins says too, and I just love this statement. He says, people want to be happy, but they don't know how to be happy. They don't know what that is, and they don't know how to get there. And so one of the things when I'm working with people is once we define what it is, right, we've got to build a pathway to get there. And because they've never been there before, they wouldn't be dealing with this subject matter, right? Like, let's take your example of money. And money's whatever that means to people. It's different value, right? Could be maybe 10% more a year, or I want to make $1 million, or I want to start a company that's going to, feed the world, whatever that is, right? Those negative beliefs. I mean, here's the thing. And Dr. Alice, you talked about this. The opening is you master your emotions, you master your life. Mm-hmm. Donovan, everything that we do, all the roadblocks that we have in life, every single one of them is going to come down to one thing and one thing only. And it comes down to self-worth. That's it. When I start unpacking all those emotions, the core essence of who we are is how we feel about ourselves. Bottom line, end of story. So my job also, my passion, is to build up that self-esteem and that self-confidence in people so they can move forward. Because without that, no matter what you do, I can give everybody the tools to build a house, but if you don't feel like you can, or you don't feel worthy, you're never going to hammer the first nail, right? So what we do in NLP really is about, the bottom line is this, because every event, assume this is an event, every event has an emotion attached to it. Every event, I don't care what it is. So if I was to ask you, do you remember brushing your teeth 2 weeks ago Tuesday? Your face. She's like, that's a stupid question. Or no, I don't. Of course you don't.
I know I did it, but I don't remember.
You know why? There's no emotion attached to it.
Yeah.
Now, if I said the same thing to you and you just got a phone call at the moment you were brushing your teeth that your best friend just passed away, or you hit the lotto in that moment, you would never forget it because the emotion is so impactful. What it does is, as Donovan was talking a moment, it anchors, it solidifies, that emotion to that event. Now let's go back in the past to the negative events. Those negative events have negative emotions. That's why we remember them. That's why they come up so often, because the emotion of that negative event is so high and at such a peak level that when something good comes along, whatever the level of emotion is, I mean, you could be happy here, but if your depression is here, it's going to override that event. Does that make sense? So what we do in NLP is really extract that emotion from the event. So now the event becomes neutral. And then when you think about it in the past, it's like, oh yeah, I remember that. That happened. I mean, I had one like that with my father going through my second NLP course. My dad is very successful. He worked for the Teamsters Union. He was vice president of the 14 Western states out here, but he was never home, never home. And so I struggled with that for a long time. And finally, when I finally realized it wasn't his fault, that he was doing the best he could. That just wasn't his path to, number one goal wasn't to become a great father. His goal is to become a great provider. Right? Thank God I had a grandfather and mother there that were always to nourish this kind of passion in me. So going through the course, when I finally got to the point where I could eliminate that judgment about him and fill it back up with forgiveness, my life was so much better, was so much more fun, I could say, rather than holding on to the past and be resentful for what he didn't give me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's what most people struggle with. Usually it's their parents.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have had that my own personal struggles with my father, and I used to sabotage my relationships with men because I was like, oh, well, my father didn't care about me. He never went to my swim meets, kind of a thing, but kind of similar boat as you.
Absolutely.
It's all about focusing on being a provider too. And he wasn't like trained emotionally to be emotionally expressive, traditional Asian father.
No,
not really. Yeah. So
well, you go back 50 years into society and men, all over the world, and care what it was, that's what their job was.
Exactly.
That was there to take care of the family, more like a, prime medieval household, right? You got the caveman and the cave woman. The men go out and hunt and the women take care of the family.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's completely almost different. It's sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. I would say, I've actually had, I've been trained in NLP myself, so I'm familiar with it. Like I've received it and I've given it, and it's such a powerful tool. And one of the things that I say is that kind of like you can get things on an intellectual level. Like I got things that why I kept sabotaging, like I did traditional talk therapy, and I could intellectually understand why I sabotaged my relationships because my father was emotionally unavailable. But it wasn't until like I did other things like NLP and EMDR and like other modalities that kind of helped me unlock that the emotion from the past and like disassociate it, so I could like be free and realize that it's not that my father never cared about me. It's just like that story that little 8-year-old created in her head.
Yeah, and that's so true, because at 8 years old, right, the what we call in hypnosis is the theory of mind. It's the analytical process. It doesn't develop until we're 8 or 10 years old. Like, I'll give you a perfect example. If you believed in Santa Claus, right, how does a child believe in Santa Claus? Really, when you really think about it, how does a child believe in Santa Claus? I'm at Donovan. How does a child believe in Santa Claus? Stupid question, I know, get it, but think about it.
Yeah, I mean, to some degree, you've got to take it on faith, I guess, or just like what other people are telling you.
True, and the physical realm of the world, they don't understand yet. So there's no contradictory evidence to support the non-belief. So they don't say to themselves, come on, Mom, that big fat man doesn't fit down that little hole in the chimney. Because that's logical, right? Like, oh, he gets all over the world in a matter of 12 hours. That's logical, because they don't have that yet. That's the analytical process of the brain. And if you have children, and you've grown up with children, they don't start asking the question why until they're 8 or 10 years old. Why is the sky blue? Why does he wear a red suit? Why are you my parents? Those questions start developing at that young age. So we don't really get it We don't get life until we start really asking deeper questions like that. Before 8 years old, you believe everything given to you, everything, no doubt. And so you take that on. So if your dad, my father, is never home, what do you learn as an 8-year-old? What, Dr. Ellis, you just said it a second ago. You could have made up, well, he doesn't care about me.
He doesn't care.
That is not true.
Or
that's
you
what
don't
we
matter.
End up exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not worthy. Right? That doesn't mean it's true. And where do we come up with those beliefs? Because the child at that age is only doing one thing. It only wants affection and love. It doesn't recognize anything else. It either works for them or it doesn't. So we start developing all these crazy beliefs before we're 8 years old. And then we spend the next 90 years trying to uncover them.
Right.
I want to pull us back to sort of this idea of emotional mastery. And we were talking about definitions before. I'm curious if, because we've been talking about, finding events from the past, disengaging emotions in places that they're not useful or stories that they're not useful.
Right.
Is this what you mean by emotional mastery, or is this something else?
Well, it could, yes and no. It could be both. I mean, if I have time to spend with somebody, I want to eliminate, and that's a bad word because you can never eliminate the negative emotion. What you can do is just replace it with something better. But here's the sad thing. There's other modalities, Dr. Alice was saying, that try to eliminate the emotion. But if the event is still there, it's like a hole. And that hole needs to be plugged up with something. And because the unconscious mind, which runs 90% of us, will fill it back up with what's the known or the most comfortable. So it will replace it with the same belief again or the same emotion. So you have to replace it with something that's more powerful, an emotion that's more powerful, a higher level peak emotional state, right? So people walk around with this depressed state. If you try to replace it with something, this happy state's not going to work, because that emotional glue will always hold that event, stable. Now, the other part of that question is, yes, we want to eliminate that, but then what can we do to manifest a more powerful emotion? And here's the crazy thing, as nuts as this sounds, I can ask a question like, what emotional state would you like to have at any given moment? I can snap my fingers and I can give it to you. What emotional state would you like to have at any given moment? Do you know it takes sometimes up to half hour for them to figure that out? Do you know why? Because they've never been there before. Wow. They don't know what it is. They don't know why they want to feel that way. So the unconscious mind, which runs 90% of us, is comfortable in holding on to the same position or the same events or the same past because it's what the known is. It's what's known. And so we have to uncover that and find out what direction are we going to be moving. And, whether it be, I want to make more money, I want a better relationship, I want health and fitness, is also what are the emotions that you're going to need to get there? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it reminds me of the, I can never remember the titles of books when I need them, but it reminds me of the metaphor with the rider and the elephant. I don't know if you read the book where that's like very prominent. Happiness hypothesis, maybe. Anyway, it's sort of this idea that, you have like this rider that's the logical piece,
right?
And you can thrash around and do as much as you want, but if you don't have the emotional piece on your side, if you don't have that elephant and you don't do the things to sort of train it and nudge it in the right direction, then you're never going to get where you want to be.
Never.
And I think that's like the same, a different explanation for the same set of ideas here.
Yeah.
But that really resonated and like lit up that metaphor back in my brain.
Yeah. There's a great process that was invented by Dr. Tad James. He just passed away last year. It's called timeline therapy. You've heard about it, Dr. Alice? Timeline? Probably one of the most powerful techniques in the world I've ever come across. And it's really simple. It takes the client to have an imagination where they close their eyes, sit in the chair, they float above their body, they float back into the past to this negative event, and they look down on this event. Now, we ask them, how old were you? Oh, I don't know, maybe I was 4, 5, or 6. Sometimes before, it could be before birth, maybe a past life or something like that, because the unconscious mind doesn't have to be logical, right? So we look down on this event and say, what resources or emotions would you have had that you needed then that would have been powerful enough to give you the confidence or the self-worth to take you away from that event itself. Right now, I'll give you an example. Your father is screaming at you and yelling at you, and as horrible as this sounds, and you know this, parents say some really bad things to kids. I wish I never had you. You're worthless. You're a piece of, If you can look down on that event and say, well, you know what? I wish I had patience. I wish I had the confidence to know that my father was hurting more than I was, and to give me the wherewithal to say he needed love more than I did. Oh my God, I'm going to break up right now. He needed love more than I did at that moment. Once you have that resource, once you have that, what we call lesson, then we go a little further back into the past, plug it into ourselves, and then float right down into the event itself and say, now I have this lesson. Now I have this love or this confidence. How would I respond differently to that event? And because the brain cannot tell what between what's real and what's imaginary, you literally go through this and reframe the whole event. I mean, sometimes it takes like an hour or two to do this because a lot of people are so struggling with that emotion tied up into it. We've got to really unlatch that first, or unleash it before we repack it with something. And then you can see their whole body will just, oh my God, the steam will come out of their head because they're releasing this negative emotion. And then we float them up above the timeline and back into the now, right back into the chair. And oh my God, I've seen immediate transformations with people. Immediate. It's amazing because the emotion, what you could call the glue, held that event, is no longer working for them. This new emotion has replaced it. And the next question I know you're going to ask me, Donovan, is, well, yeah, but that's like saying they're pretending that the event never happened like that. No, the event happened like that. We acknowledge that.
Yeah.
But we acknowledge that we didn't have the resources available at that age to deal with the event at the time. But because we are who we are now, I know I have those emotions in me now, and I can bring them back to the past. And once I acknowledge the emotion, because it's already in me, I go, wow, now I'm seeing the event through my own eyes with those new resources, and it changes the history. It's just crazy how this stuff works. Everybody should learn NLP.
I agree. It's
They should
so powerful.
They should be teaching this stuff to kids in school.
Yeah, it opens up so much for people with their emotions, and something that seems so heavy for them, like the example you gave with the father screaming at the child. When you can like detach from it and like look from like a third party person and realize it's like it had nothing to do with you. Your father was dealing with his own shit. It had like, it was just like, and he probably, maybe had a father that was screaming at him and didn't teach him the skills. And so it's like having that perspective, which obviously a child would not at that age, but as an adult, you can see that and have maybe even some compassion for your father. And that's
great word. Great word.
Yeah.
I mean, look, at everything that we learn comes from our primary caretakers. Now, I don't know who that is. Could be your grandparents, could have been a foster care, right? Most likely it's probably your parents or one parent. And as you just said it, where did they learn it?
Yeah.
From their parents. And then from their parents, it's genealogical. Everything's passed down. Those are behaviors that are passed down. I'll tell you a quick joke. I love this joke. This woman gets married, and young girl, and the husband says, why do you end up cutting off the roasts on each end before you cook it? She goes, oh, that's a great question. I have no idea. I saw my mom do that. Let's go ask my mom. So they go to the mother. Mom, why did you cut off the ends of the roast before you cooked it? She goes, that's a strange, I don't know. That's how my mother did it. So they go ask grandma. Grandma, why did you cut off the ends of the roast before you cook it? She goes, all I had was this small pan.
Nice.
But that's what we do with beliefs. They're passed down like that, and they become ours, and they become real for us. And we operate in our daily life now at this age from those beliefs that have been, God knows where they came from. So until we can delete or eliminate that emotion or replace it with something that's more powerful, we're still going to create the same behaviors over and over and over again.
So to follow up on that, when you see someone doing like a technique like this or working through some of these things, is there a typical timeline, great variation in timeline? Like, how much work do you see it take for people to unpack some of this stuff? Because I got to imagine if you're telling yourself the same story for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, 30 minutes. Hey, if you're lucky and you get 30 minutes and you're done and hey, I got this flipped around. That's great. But I imagine that's not always how it goes.
Not always, though. This was one of the problems that Dr. Grinder and the professor at Santa Cruz University, Richard Bandler, John Grinder, found that they could start eliminating all these negative past emotions. And it was happening very quickly. I'll give you an example. If you went to a traditional psychologist or psychiatrist, which they tend to give you more drugs, and you had a massive phobia, like you had one to snakes or airplanes or getting on an elevator, it would probably take years to get over that phobia. Years. We have a technique. If they're ready, 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Nobody believes this. When I was going through school learning NLP, I said, oh my God, this is crazy stuff. Again, why aren't we teaching this in schools? And why aren't the hospitals bringing in practitioners like this to help people? My friend at the time was just learning it too. He said, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna start a business. It's gonna be called Fast Phobia Release Process. And I'm gonna get all these people that have phobias and all these massive fears to come to me. And I'm like, no. He goes, I'm gonna charge $350. I go, nobody's gonna pay you $350 to sit there for 15 minutes. Guess what he charges now for it? $12,000.
$12,000. Damn.
Why? Because if you're afraid of an elevator, sure, and you work in the top floor and you've been taking the stairs every day, or you can't get on a plane and your parents just died back east, you're going to pay whatever it costs to get rid of that thing that's holding you back, learning to get out of your own way. Because see, it's just supply and demand.
True.
That's all it is. So there's techniques like that that are out there that are so quick that can facilitate stuff like this. Donovan, the problem is they've got to be ready. And that's one of the things that we have to ask. Mm-hmm. Will you allow your unconscious mind to make this change today and let it go forever? And as soon as I see them, either they give me a yes, or they go, yeah, I guess so. They're not ready. And so we got to dig a little bit more to peel more of the layers of onions to find out if they're truly committed, because you already know this. When somebody is, one of the things Tony Robbins says, when you're committed, it'll happen.
Yeah.
Give you an example. I work with smoking patients. Mm-hmm. Smoking is very easy to get over. Like within an hour, I can immediately facilitate somebody, but they got to be ready. Mm-hmm. They got to be ready. Right. And once they're ready, my job's done. I just push them over the edge. Because how many people you know, or maybe you don't, can quit cold turkey? How do they do that? And every single person I've ever talked to has said the same exact thing. I just decided it was time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the other people go, I want to quit, but it's so hard. They're not ready. Mm. We laugh in the NLP community. We say we're the last people that they come to when they're struggling with something. And the reason they come to us is because they're sick and tired of being sick and tired. And once they're at that point, they've made the decision to make the change. And then the unconscious mind, which runs 90% of us, goes click, done. My job is just to kind of give them the confidence and push them along, give them some tools to help that.
Awesome. Yeah, such powerful stuff.
It is. It is very powerful. Like Great. I said, if we were to teach all our kids this in school, we'd be the most powerful nation. We'd be the most powerful, the world would be an amazing gift.
Oh, I know. The things we could all accomplish if we kind of removed all these limiting.
Oh, well, think about it. What if, so if we teach the kids growing up now this technology, they become great parents. Oh, and then they perpetuate a better society, because now they're teaching their children you're loved, you're accepted, you're wanted, you're healthy, you're emotionally and financially fit. Then they teach their kids, and then the process continues.
That would be such a beautiful thing.
Totally beautiful thing.
Yes. Awesome, John. Well, it's been such a pleasure to have you on our show. Before we wrap up today, is there anything you want to share or plug with our audience?
Well, yeah, I put together a simple 7-lesson. It's an NLP mini course, and it's 7 lessons. They're email lessons with an audio attached to it, and it's free if you sign up for my email list. They can go to LA, like Los Angeles, LANLP.com, 5 letters, /free. And it'll take them right to the sign up page. They'll get the mini course, and it's some amazing, simple tools that they can learn to change their daily routines and the people around them. I'll give you an example. One of the lessons is change your language. And there's 3 words: try, but, and problem. The word try doesn't exist. You can't try to do anything. Either you're doing it or you don't do it. But in the United States, we use that word so often, it's crazy. So I tell my students, get rid of that word try, replace it with the word I will or I won't. I'll try to make your party Saturday night. They don't show up, right? The next one is but. A but is a negation. God, Dr. Alice, I love you so much, but it doesn't matter what comes after that. I've just negated everything that came before it. So you use the word and, which is what's called a causal linkage. I love you so much, and I want to develop our relationship even stronger. And use the word challenge instead of the word problem. Because a problem is something that's insurmountable. A challenge is almost a hiccup.
Right. Yeah. And something that you overcome. It's like we're supposed to overcome challenges.
Exactly. There you go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, everyone check that out, and we'll link put that link in the description too down below so you can check it out. John, thank you so much for being on our show.
Oh, both of you, thank you so much for the questions. I really appreciate your concern. This is awesome. You guys are doing a great job.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for tuning in. If you have experience with NLP or if you're curious about it, put some comments in the comment section below and we'd love to hear about it.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please take a second to subscribe, as it really helps out a lot. If you're looking for more content, there's all sorts of information over at howtohappy.com. And if you want something a little bit more condensed and concise, I've also written the book Mindscaping, which is essentially a framework for optimizing happiness. So we'll have the link there as well. And that's all I've got. Thanks again. I'll see you next time.